can always edit it later.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
So, well,
Great.
first I want to say thank you for joining me today, Maria. I appreciate your time. I know we just met. We met at an awesome networking event this past weekend, and I really appreciate you being willing to hop on here real quick to help us educate some new investors and even some seasoned investors that need to
Yeah,
know how to work with real estate agents. And so I will introduce you. This is Maria Bonilla, and she is a real estate agent and an investor, which is always a key
awesome.
thing to work with. So again, welcome, Maria. Thank you again for joining me.
Thank you. Is it Stefan? Is that how you say it?
It's Stefan. Stefan, just
Stefan.
like I
Okay.
always tell people, it's like Stephanie without the IE on the end. It's spelled and
Stefan.
pronounced the same way. Yep.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I want to thank you as well for inviting me on. I know that you got a circle of people that look to you for information, so having the ability to connect the dots is super helpful for others, especially those starting out in this industry. I would say there's a lot of information out there, too much information
Yeah.
sometimes. And it's very important for others to take every information they receive with a grain of salt, right? Just to make sure they do their homework, they know who they're speaking to. And so for the first couple of minutes, I guess I'll introduce myself so other people know what I've done, what I do, and how I can help. And because I have a little bit of experience in those certain things, those certain avenues, they feel more comfortable of knowing, hey, I can call because she does this or she knows this, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I appreciate you letting me come on and share my time with
That's
you.
again, thank you
So
again for joining me. Go right ahead.
awesome. So I started in the real estate investment world about 2018, so 5 years in. Started with the Rich Dad Poor Dad events that they put on, and they did a lot of conferences where people would spend a lot of money for no reason. I was one of them, just looking for information, looking for ways to build wealth, build so some sort of substantial income, right? Something that we don't usually get from a W-2 job unless we're, a professional such as a doctor or something along those lines. So, in that search of gaining more information, I came across these events, and because I spend, lots of money on them, I was like, okay, now I have to make it work, right? And I'm sure there's other people in that boat where they spend money on like mentorships or different education, but the education doesn't really mean anything unless you're going to take action to put forth behind it,
Absolutely.
right? And so I'm that kind of person. Okay, I spend the money, now I have to make that money back. And I feel like in any investment, whether it's education, whether it's systems, you have to really understand that how you're going to make that money back is by taking action to get that money back. So I started in that journey. They didn't really give a lot of help because it was more of a global company, and I needed some more of like one-on-one personal contact connections. So I joined the Atlanta REIA, which is a local real estate investment alliance. That's what it stands for. But I joined them and really got to get into the nitty gritty of this business, right? And I did anything and everything. So we went door knocking, we went driving for dollars, we put bandit signs, just that hard part of the business,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
That most people don't do, or if they do it, they don't do it consistently enough to actually get something in return, right? And so I did my first deals. The first couple of investment deals that I did were fix and flips. I felt like it was an easy way to get into the business. I found a deal. I would find a private investor or another investor I would partner with. They would bring the funds because I had no money at that point. And we would do the project together. And so after a couple of years of this, I noticed that I was having to give the business to other people because I wasn't licensed as
Okay.
far as when it came to buying properties, if they were on market or selling the property on market, right? So I was like, why don't I, get my license so I can do my own deals. And so a couple of years ago, I went ahead and got my license, right? And I was able to get more involved with other deals as well. So besides fix and flip, I also buy and hold. That's something I still do till today. And most of my buy and holds I turn into lease options. So the reason why I like lease options is because you could charge a little bit more than just rent, and you usually ask for an option deposit, which allows you to have a retainer, you could say, in case they really like trash the place or anything like that. And obviously in their heads too, they're like, this is going to be my house in the future. And so that's why they usually take care of it.
It's a
So
different
I've
type of
done,
renter and buyer. Yep.
yeah, so I've done the fix and flips because you have three different categories. Really, in real estate, you only have three different categories. You have the fix flip, so short-term projects. You have the buy and hold, which are going to be your longer-term projects, and then you have the wholesale, which is connecting. Really, that's all you're doing. You're not really holding anything. You're really not buying anything. You're just connecting two parties, and you get paid off of it, right? So, and that's when kind of going through all that, you discover, what you like best, right? So when I got my license, I was able to open up my doors even wider, I would say, as an investor, because now I could work with on-market properties, I could work with off-market properties, I could work with sellers, and I had different options for them because I'm not only an investor, but I'm also an agent. So it opens up your ability to really know what to do, right? And as far as for the investor world, what I still do as an investor, I still do buy and holds. And I do a lot of TC work, which is transaction coordinator. You could kind of see it on my screen there, which just if there's any deals that are more creative, so seller finance or subject to, I help those new investors get those deals done, because I highly recommend anyone who's doing a creative deal. If it's a cash deal, that's easy, right? It's cash. So
Now,
one
do you
party is
also still
selling.
partner with brand new people that might be trying to do a cash deal as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I know people could partner with you as well. You have a lot of experience in that. So I just want to make sure that they're aware that there's a very bigger, industry in the real estate world, and that's the creative part, right? Which is giving those different options to the sellers if the cash doesn't work, right? And so there's a lot of things you can do in the creative sense. I've done novations for investors and just a lot of words that might not be very understandable at the moment. But with time, maybe we could do another Zoom call to kind of go through that creative, and whoever, likes the video and likes, the information here, we could kind of set it up for them to hear that creative part of it. But it's definitely a different world, but that's a lot of what I do now. As far as with other investors, I partner with them in those kind of deals because there's a lot of education that goes behind it and a lot of documentation that goes behind it that
Now
they might not be.
you're an agent yourself, but obviously you're also an investor. Have you interacted with other agents who may not really have a clue of what the investing side of things are?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say 100%. I interact more with those kind of agents than the ones who know the investment world, right?
Okay.
So just because when you think about an agent, and when most people go to agent school or try to get licensed, they're put in a profession. It's a professional setting, right? And investing is a little bit more of off the cuff kind of things. You got to
A
do a
little more
lot of things
creative
that more
of thinking.
creative, more of things that to some people it might look crude, but to some people it might look like, oh wow, that was you solved a problem, right? And agents usually like to stay in their world, right? They like to stay in the traditional side of, if you work with a buyer, you got to get pre-approved for, with a lender to get a mortgage. And then I can go, show you properties and then you buy. If you're a selling agent, you go and do listing presentations, right? You basically do comparative market analysis and you do all these fancy things. And then you list a property, you do open houses, you do a lot of things that it's what you're taught to do by brokerages, right? Because they like the structure, they like the easiness of it.
Now, have you found some brokerages lean a little more towards an investment side of things? Have you experienced that at all, or is it pretty much on an individual situation?
Yeah, so there are some brokerages that, are more investor friendly. And I would say that those that do become agents or are agents and are doing a lot of investment stuff, they just have to do their own due diligence, right? Because I'm not here to recommend or
Right.
tell someone go left instead of right. I'm not here to do that. You have to do your own due diligence. You have to figure out what's best for you. That's why you should always interview with a couple of brokerages to see what's best fit for you. I know there's some brokerages that provide leads, some brokerages that don't. So it's a lot of, you have to figure out, what's best for you. But yes, there are some brokerages that are very much more independent with you and what you're doing. And there's some brokerages who are very tight as far as, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. You have to let us know this and that. So it just depends on, who you're working with as far as, how flexible they are with you having an investor mentality and investor activity as well.
So if there was a new investor and they were looking for an agent who is investor friendly, how would they come about finding somebody like you? What are some of the ways that they may come across you?
Yeah, so first I would say look for those that are working with investors. You got to do a little bit of homework, right? You can't expect to go on a Zillow and find just, unless you're calling every single agent, which you can,
Mhm.
right? Nobody's stopping you. And then interview them on the phone, right? Do you work with investors? Do you have any fixer uppers? Do you, have those kind of questions? But if not, you could really tell by the fact that who's listing the remodeled homes, right? Who's the one listing them? Because most of the time, the ones that are listing those properties are usually the ones helping them buy,
Mhm.
which means that they're investor friendly, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I would definitely, if you go on market and you go look at most of the renovated properties, and those are kind of easy to find. You could look at the pictures, obviously that's number one, but number two, you can also look at the price history. If it was just bought in the last 6 months for a lower price than what it was listed for, you could reach out to that agent and say, hey, I see that you have a remodeled houses here in so and so street. So do you work with investors? That's key
Mhm.
question, right? And probably I'm guarantee you most of them are going to say absolutely. Because even if they don't work with investors, they
Mhm.
want business, right?
Right.
But it's fine because you can also take an agent who doesn't normally work with investor and have them work for you,
Absolutely.
right?
So if someone comes to you and they're wanting to say, "Hey, I'm brand new. I'm wanting somebody that I may be able to call occasionally and get some comps and things like that." Do you have kind of any ground rules for what you will or will not do? Because some people get a little excited and they'll call you every 5 minutes asking for comps on something, and so just
Yeah.
kind of what are some of your ground rules?
So I would say ground rules for that is um that's kind of hard to ask them to do something like that because they're not really seeing the beneficial factor in it. So if an investor, a newbie investor calls me, for example, and says, hey, unless I'm the listing agent on it or somewhere involved in a property that's on market, they just call me and they try to build rapport with me and they say, oh, can I send you addresses and you can help me comp? Well, what's the benefit in me for that? Right?
So they should already kind of have in their mind a way to answer that question for you to say, well, this is what I could do for you if you're willing to do that.
Exactly. So it would be a different conversation if I had an investor, and this would be a one-off, situation. I couldn't do it for everyone, right? But if an investor called me and say, "Hey, I'm looking to purchase this property in so and so Main Street," right? I'm working directly with the seller, but it's going to be a fixer-upper. So I eventually am going to want to fix it and then sell it. If you're able to help me find like that retail value of it, would you be willing to be my listing agent on it? Right. So that's a completely different conversation.
Mhm.
You're giving me something tit for tat, right?
Right.
So I'm giving you something, but eventually and most agents are going to do it, whether they end up being the listing agent or not. They're going to do it because they want business, right? And it'll take maybe 10-15 minutes of their time to maybe give them a comparable market analysis for them, right? But it's that, right? And I would go with that and choose one agent to always work with, because
Gotcha.
you don't want to be doing this to all these agents and have them doing all these sort of things. How are you going to give them back value? By the third phone call, they're probably not going to answer you anyways,
Gotcha.
to
So
be
you're
honest with
wanting to be a person of value to the
you. Right.
agent also. We make
Right.
sure
And
that when
present that value before you ask for
start
something.
asking for stuff. Yeah. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, I've often told new investors that's what you're looking for. You want to be a person of value, and that's throughout the entire transaction. That's even with the seller, with the end buyer, and all of that. And
Yep.
so yeah. So, is there any advice that you would, as we kind of wrap up? I know you've got a closing coming up yourself that I'm excited
Yes.
about, and so I appreciate your time. But I just want to say in closing, is there any advice that you would have for a new investor or even a seasoned investor that you may have seen people overlook or don't really take into consideration when they're out
Yeah.
there investing
I
in
would, I would, I would say to a lot of newbie investors, or a lot of things that I don't see investors doing, is creating more relationships with agents. I would say that's one of the key things that they should do, right? And create a fruitful relationship. I'm not talking about going and calling 100 agents and ask them for 100 different things. Just do maybe five, right? Five calls, and the top maybe two people that you feel like you build the most rapport with, work with them, but really work with them. Like maybe there's an on market deal that you want to put an offer for, right? And you're like, I did my homework and I'm like $40,000 less in price, but maybe I can find out from the listing agent that they're motivated, right?
Gotcha. Hmm.
And it's a different ball game, an agent talking to another agent, than an investor talking to an agent, because there's more of a wall, there's more of a
Hmm.
guard between investor and agent, because they live on two different worlds, right?
Hmm.
So investors, newbie investors, find yourself an investor friendly agent and work with them and have them be your guide for the other agents, right?
Awesome.
And give them business in the aspect of, if you're going to fix and flip a property, have them be your listing agent, right? If you're going to want to buy a property on market, but it's a fixer upper, like talk to them and see if they could put in an offer for you. But be very honest and transparent, right? As far as what you're doing, because there's some wholesalers that might want to send offers, but they're wholesaling the property, right?
Hmm.
So the agent needs to know that, right? And again, that's why you find yourself an investor friendly agent.
Because you don't have any problem working with a wholesaler on a property like that as long as you know what's the
What's
transaction
going
itself.
on, right? And do they have a potential buyer for it? Because if they don't, that's your problem. Number one, go find a buyer first. Did a big buyer tell you, go find me houses in this area? Oh yeah, absolutely. They went there, and I know their numbers. Perfect. So this is going to be, a good transaction. But if you're over here putting offers on it, and then, how are you going to disposition? How are you going to, find a buyer for it? I'm not going to find you a buyer. That's not my, yeah, that
Yes,
in that
yes.
case, I would have just
Mhm.
sent it directly to my buyer, right?
Now, I've suggested to people to start off by getting cash buyers on their buyers list. That's one of the reasons why I go networking and stuff. That's how you and I met. I'm assuming you go out to these networking events also because you're trying to build relationships and connections with both potential buyers, potential sellers, and just building your network in general. Is that accurate?
Correct. Exactly. So yes, I feel like you have to go chase it. It's not going to come to you. And so if you're going to work with agents and you're going to wholesale, make sure you already have potential buyers already lined up. It is not our job to do it, right? And we don't want to be put in position where now it's an ethical thing, right? It's like, why did you get me under contract to not execute? That makes no sense, right? So I would say when it's a newbie investor, either go work or partner with someone who has the buyers, or go find the buyers first and then start looking for your deals.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, Maria, I don't want to take up any more of your time today. We will make sure we do this again. And I am also looking forward to staying connected so you and I can do some business together as well.
Yeah, I
So I
appreciate it.
greatly appreciate your time, everybody. This is Maria Bonilla, and thank you very much for your time. Awesome
All right.
conversation, awesome information, and we'll talk again soon. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good, Stefan.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right, bye.
Bye-bye. If you like what you've got today and all the information I'm sharing with you today, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well.